Why do you keep struggling when trying to use the Milton model or hypnotic language in general, and what are the easiest ways for you to get what you want out of those techniques? The very first thing I have noticed in students and beginners is that they are so much caught up inside their own head that they even forget about the client or the subject they have in front of them. And it is normal in the beginning because you are thinking about how should I use this metaphor, how should I use this embedded command, all those things. However, if you are too much caught up in your head, then you're completely disconnecting from the person in front of you. However, the whole thing about hypnotic language is about influencing the person in front of you. And if you are too much inside your own head thinking, you are not paying attention enough to how do they respond to you. Maybe one of the embedded commands you are going to say is going to have a tremendous impact on them, and some others will have zero impact. Well, if you don't pay attention to that enough, then you may just stay on the wrong track and keep over-intellectualizing what to say next, whereas your client is giving you all the cues you need to know what to say next. Once you pay more attention to them and less to what you are supposed to say into your own head. In the end, even if you don't have the best, cleverest hypnotic language, focusing on the client is the real core, the real source of it. Hypnotic language is more like all the sprinkles around it. The Milton model is more a way to facilitate the change, but it is not the core mechanic of how do the therapeutic relationship helps people to change. The core of that is how much do you pay attention to them, how much empathetic are you, and how much do you want to help them change. And from there, any kind of advanced hypnotic language patterns may be an additive, it may be something useful, but just get out of your head the idea that the whole change happens because I said the right thing. That doesn't work like this. It is more like the sprinkles you can add to a therapeutic relationship between you and your client that is being built. On a side note, before going to number 2, if you have some trouble to study on your own and to develop those skills by yourself, I have now a community that you can find in the description called the NLP Next Gen community, where you can exchange with me directly. Every Thursday we have a call where you are going to ask your questions and we're going to discuss together how you can improve on your skills. That being said, the number 2 big problem I see all the time is that people practice, like they have a friend with whom they practice their Milton model or sleight of mouth or hypnotic language patterns, but they have a friend or literally a client in front of them and they are trying to use language, NLP language in some way, but without any clear outcome in mind. And your language is always going to adapt, as well as your vocal tonality, as well as your eye contact. All of that and the words you say are going to naturally adapt when you have a really clear outcome in mind with your client. An outcome might be something as simple as if this client is coming because of some smoking problems, then I want to help him or her get rid or change this problem. And how do I do that? For example, I picture in my head themselves, the client or the person, feeling ecstatic, really rejuvenated, well rested, in a really good mood, in a really good shape. When I picture that in my head, I'm going to say the right things because I have given to my unconscious mind the right signal, the right direction, and from that direction, it will be really easy to sort out which of all the hypnotic language patterns, which of all the Milton model patterns do I need to use right now. If it is not clear in your head and if you're caught up in the process, in the tool, which is the language, you will never really get as far into the head of your client to create a deep change. So have a clear outcome in mind, and if you do that as an exercise with a friend or during some training or some seminar, picture in your head or decide with your partner what is something you want to change about yourself, or what is something we could practice in terms of persuasion skills. What is something you might be inclined to change your opinion on, but not too kind neither, and I will aim at making you change your mind or your opinion on that thing. And you have this really clear outcome in mind. You may have this auditory signal of what are they going to say once they will agree with you, and from there you're going to find that the right sequence of words are going to get out of your mouth much more easily because you have targeted the right outcome. If you don't have the right outcome in mind, it is super complex because then you have 1,000 tools. For example, this is the Milton model in the way I was taught, in the way they taught it to me when I was into some hypnosis practice seminar. And although it is cool to see all those techniques and those things, by the way, sorry, it is in French, it is not in English, because I am not an English speaker, and you have all of that, but if you don't have a clear outcome in mind for what do I want to do with that, then you will always be confused, because you will never know if you need to use this technique, that one. It will always be too confusing. Whereas when you have a really clear outcome in mind, it can become utterly simple to just say the right thing because you have studied maybe just 2 or 3 of those patterns. And with the clear outcome in mind, your unconscious mind, don't worry, will know which of them it needs to use at this specific moment with that person. If you are present in the moment, connected to the person in front of you, then you will say the right things very easily. Number 3 is to try to learn everything theoretically, the third mistake, to try to learn everything theoretically before practicing. Like, I can't have a real client in real life right now. Aspiring coaches, people who want to become a coach, for example, they are like, oh, or like a hypnotist, I can't have a real client right now because I haven't mastered the whole Milton model, or the whole sleight of mouth model, or the whole meta model. And in the end, you don't need to have everything sorted out before practicing, because it is the mistakes you are going to do during your sessions that will teach you. And most likely, especially in the world of therapy where there is a lot of empathy and you want to help others, those links will create themselves very easily because you will be in front of somebody, you will make mistakes, naturally, that's really the whole point. And your mind will adapt faster if you make those mistakes while in a session, and you will notice what you say doesn't provide any impact on the client. And that's how your unconscious mind is really going to calculate way faster, because you learn the most and the fastest into the extremes. I can't stress that enough. You learn faster and you learn the most into extreme situations. Obviously, situations where physical violence is involved might not be things I would recommend, but here we're not really playing with violence. There is no threat. Worst case scenario, they don't change, you give their money back. Worst case scenario. Even that is not bad. Like, you have still learned about what you can do next time. You have still learned about how you can improve your language skills. So many advantages. The way I got out of this mental masturbation pattern kind of thinking is to take only one pattern, only one language pattern, so like embedded commands, or not even this one, like just a phonological ambiguity, or the yes set, which is part of the Milton model. And you just take one pattern, and your mission is to use that one pattern into at least 3 conversations today or within the next week eventually, and just 3 times. One pattern 3 times. Once you have used it 3 times, even if it didn't do anything on the people, doesn't matter. It's just to train yourself to change the way you talk, change the way you use words. And once you have done this one 3 times, then you can go to the next pattern. So then this time the embedded commands, for example, another technique of the Milton model. And same thing, in 3 conversations with 3 different people, your mission is to use that pattern into all of those conversations, and on and on and on. And you don't need to go through the whole Milton model, just maybe 5 to 10 techniques will be enough. That way you just train your mind to think in a hypnotic manner, if I can put it that way. You just train your language to articulate ideas in a hypnotic way. And even if people don't change at the moment you're using that, the fact that you are getting experience out of using those patterns instead of intellectualizing about it while reading about it and never really using them, that's why it's going to train your intuition to know what to say to who at which moment, and you won't need to think that much anymore, which means unconscious competence that you may know probably. Mistake number 4 is to crack your head on the metaphors, and so many beginners are really putting massive stress on themselves with creating the best storytelling possible. And I have seen some people overwhelming themselves so much with trying to be so clever about crafting a hypnotic story like Bandler is doing. And in the end, it just sounds awful, it just sounds off, because they are so much into their own head, trying to remember what they memorized when they wrote their hypnotic metaphor, that they're not even present here. They are inside their own head, and even if they look at you, you can see in their eyes they're not even there. They are into their own head and try to rehearse exactly the right words they said the first time. But they're not really there. And metaphors are something that you, first of all, you have it or you don't have it when you start. I had it from the get-go. If you don't have it from the get-go, it means like your right brain is just more functional than in most people. Usually if you are an artist, very likely you will be good at metaphors because you're already used to think with this abstract metaphorical thinking. If it is not your case, you can train yourself, but people put so much emphasis on metaphors because they think they work more than anything else. They don't work more than anything else, they just work for people who like telling stories. That's really the whole point here. If you enjoy telling stories, then definitely work on your skills with creating really well-crafted metaphors, metaphors that are really incredibly clever in the way you are inserting your embedded commands into it. If you like telling stories, do that. If you don't already enjoy telling stories by itself, there are a million other techniques from the Milton Model you can use at the same time, and you don't need to force yourself into metaphors and impressive nested loops and storytelling. It is just one technique out of many. Do they work really well? Yes. And at the same time, so many other techniques from the NLP field work so much too. So if you don't feel like you're really good at metaphors, or like you have a propensity to learn them right away, maybe you can train yourself. It is just not vital neither. So don't fall into the trap of trying to believe that just because you don't master metaphors, you can't hypnotize, because the only people who are good with conversational hypnosis are incredibly good at metaphors and stories. It is just one technique among many. You don't need that one specifically if you're not particularly good with it. And last one, number 5, is that the technical skill is not really that important. What is important is that you change as an identity. If you stop for once, if you stop seeing the Milton Model or any kind of hypnotic language as a technical skill to learn, and that you start considering yourself as a hypnotist, as an advanced hypnotist, or as a person who is becoming an advanced hypnotist. Maybe you are needing a few months to get there, but you are getting there at your own rhythm. When you start considering yourself as somebody who is becoming an advanced hypnotist, so we are right here on the identity level and not on the capacities level. You may know about this pyramid of logical levels, where if you put something on the capacities, capabilities, it may be less important in your life, whereas something put into the identity level is so strong that all the other things below may change more easily. Not always the case, but pretty often if you change something on the identity level, it may collapse on all the other levels. So instead of thinking, how should I use this technique, this skill, which is capacities thinking, capacities level in the pyramid of how can I use this? If you step up and you start thinking, how does an advanced hypnotist would say that? How does an advanced hypnotist is capable, how is someone like this capable of using embedded commands, of using the metaphor, of using those nested loops, of using the yes set, of using those ambiguities in the language? When you start thinking in terms of identity shift, your brain will fire off many more ideas and will be more clever about how to use it with that client, with that person in front of you, than if you try to rehearse the techniques basically like a child in school. So if you want to really develop your skills, of course it can be difficult by yourself on your own. If you have some trouble and you want guidance and you want a group of people, there is a community for you down below in the description, first link, where you can have a talk with us. We can just exchange, and we can do role playing if you have trouble to develop your skills with language patterns and you're not fluid or you overthink. You can just practice with me directly. Every Thursday I'm there on the calls to train you, to help you figure out what's blocking you, what you need to get help on, and how to unlock your brain to find the right way of using those hypnotic patterns or anything else. It is in the description down below, and I will be glad to see you there if you want to join.